Okay, last time we were talking about how to display the data, and this time how we will talk about how to insert the data into the Salesforce. Let's say if you want to create the records of any object, maybe account or contact any custom object. Let's create the VF page. Let's say create account VF. Let's say VF page which we have created. Let's talk about the server side controller. Let's create the Apex. That's my Apex class. So here on the VFA side, we will be going to create some input fields, and on click of some button, we will send the data to the server side controller, and we will save the data. So for that, let's create one form, text form. Inside that, we can create one Apex page block and put some title, account, input, form, and here you can define Apex input. So let's say you can define either you can use input text or input field. There are differences in between text and field. When you are using input text, uh, that is basically for the custom of fields, means the data type or attribute which we have. When we use apex input field, we use the object type of fields, but when we use input text, we use any normal primitive type of field. For example, let's say use apex input and use the value. Let me declare some attribute here, public string count name. And here when you are declaring any attribute, that should be with get set. Get set means we also call it getter setter methods. Purpose of these getter setter is, with the help of this, we can set the data from VF page, or we can send the data from Apex controller to VF page, or VF page to Apex controller. Means when we want to communicate the data, send the data from Apex to VF or VF to Apex, we have to define our properties, our variables, getter setter with the help of get set. So that is the string type of parameter account name. Let's define the object type of parameter. Object means account, obj acc. Again, we have to define it with the help of getter and setter. Let's save it. So what I mean here, let's say if I try to bind this attribute here, let me save it. Unknown property object account dot name reference in this. So as I said, we cannot use object type of field in the input text. But let's say if I try to use this field, okay, first thing I am missing, that I need to include my apex class as well. Earlier on the previous page, we were using the standard controller and we were including the account or any object, that is standard or custom object. But when we create any apex class, and if we want to use the apex class inside the vf page, we have to use the controller keyword. Means we cannot use the standard controller for the apex class custom class. But now if you see this, that is the apex class which we have created, and if you want to include that apex class in the vf page, we have to use the controller keyword, not the standard controller keyword we use only with the objects, salesforce objects. Those can be the custom or standard objects. It's saved now. Again, let me use apex input field. So it will make sense for you. You will be able to understand it clearly what is the difference between the input text and input field. I'm going to refer the same name. Let's say that is the formula expression by which we map the value. Let's preview this page. At one field you will see it's normal, at one field you will see it's mandatory. Here it's mandatory and it's not mandatory. Reason is, when we are using input field, it's belonging to the Salesforce objects, and it's inheriting the styles or all the sharing settings from the Apex, from the not from the Apex, from the Salesforce itself. But here it's a custom field which we have created with the data type or primitive data type string. It's not belonging to any object. That is the reason it's not inheriting the standard properties. Let me define here name, and here as well name. Let me create one button, command button. We'll put one action. Action means it will be the function, server side function. So we have to create the function. Let me create the function here. Public page reference, that's a class, and it reference or belong to the via page. Create accounts or account. Here we will see that we should get the data in these attributes. So let me debug those first. We'll see whether we are getting the data here or not. So that is the method, and here this is the return type page reference. Either we have to return something which should be type of page reference, or we can return null. Null is generic here. So let me copy the function name. Okay, so let's define the value. Save account or create account. Let me put it create. Let's save it. So here we got the button. If I click on this, it will be going to check whether we are entering any data or not. If we are not entering data, it won't let us save. So I'll show you the debug logs as well, what data we are getting here. Let me put some data. Click on create account, and now check this output. Let's see what we got in the developer console or in debug logs. Here in one property we got Ravi, another we got null. And reason is, this is the account type, standard account type or object type property, and it's not yet initialized. So if you want to get the data, receive the data in this, we have to initialize those. So what we do for the initialization, we use the constructor. This time I should get the data. Let me enter and create account. Okay, we got the data. And another thing is, see, if you people are confusing, this is the standard, like this is the custom text which I had put. What I mean, let me show you here. When I'm putting something in the codes, that is the custom text. Just for the help text, you can simply put this account. You can put like this as well. That is the custom text which you are putting for your understanding. You can put anything: object, account, object, data. So you can put anything. This is no, there is no standard for that. It's up to you, which suits you, you can put. Let's add some more fields here. Some more fields means we can add 4 5 fields here. Let's say phone, rating, industry. So here we have to put those API name: account dot phone, account dot rating, account dot industry. Okay. Let me remove this. We don't need this custom text, custom or data type, the input text. I have shown you that your input text won't respect your validation rules or standard validation rules, because it doesn't belong to any object. Input field is belong basically belong to the object properties, and it will respect all the sharing settings. Here you can put it these in a new line, and how you can put br here. See, it will look a bit better now. Let's put the data. Rating, put something hot. Industry, you can put any industry, whichever you want. So these are the values which are coming from the object itself. If you will go to the account and you see in rating and industry, these are the picklist type of field on the account. Let me show you so that you shouldn't have any confusion. If you'll create any account from the standard process, you'll see this rating and industry. If you want to check the API name, click on the fields, search for rating. You see the rating here, click on that rating field. You will see all the values are here. If you want to see the values for industry, you can search for the industry on the account fields. Account is standard object, and these are the standard fields on this standard object. These are the values which are available on the industry field on account object. Okay. So let's select something, and when we click on the create, we will be able to get the values in the debug logs. Let me show you the debug logs here. See, name, phone, rating, industry. We have removed that. We have commented that ACC name variable in VF page we are getting null, but in account object details. So whatever the text we had put in single quotes, that is coming here. A part of that we are binding the attribute dynamically here. So that is the static text which will be as is, and we are binding this attribute dynamically, means it will have always the different values or the values which you are sending from the via page. So we have to insert the data here. When I will insert, I will get the records in Salesforce. Let me put what we will check the ID, or you can say account ID. So in this attribute, we can, as we can access all the all the fields of the account. This is the instance variable of account. So we can get the field like dot, this reference variable dot field name. So this time we need the ID. I'll show you the ID in the org. We hard agriculture create account. We must have account in the system now. Let me show you. Let's check the debug log. We'll pick the ID from the debugs, and then we'll see what ID we have got. Debug, we got this ID. Let's copy this ID, go to the Salesforce here, and replace this URL. That is the base Salesforce URL, we call it. After slash you can paste your ID, and you can press enter. You will get the details here. Let's say right now what we are doing, we are navigating manually to the detail page. But if you want to navigate dynamically, we have several ways. Let me try one way if it works. We can directly append the ID. If it accepts that, no. Then another way is we will be going to instantiate the page reference. Here we will be going to build the URL, create the URL. So automatically it will pick the base URL, and we will bind up the ID dynamically here. So what it will do, let me show you that. Here, this is the page reference, means it reference the page, it belongs to the page properties, or it defines the page property. It's a class in Salesforce, page reference. We use this page reference attribute or class in the Apex when we are including this Apex class in the via page. And here we are appending backslash. Backslash will work here like this one. It will automatically have this URL, base URL. We are appending in single quotes slash, and then ID. So here you see it will automatically give you the base URL. We don't need to bother about that. After that we are appending slash and then ID. Let's create the records here. Let's create account. Now you can see we have navigated to this detail page. Whatever the details we had filled, industry, education, rating, hot, number this, name this. Now we have navigated successfully to the detail page of this account. So this is how you can move from one page to another page, or when we are saving the records and we want to navigate to the detail page, we can move in this way. Go back to this code. So this is the simple portion of the code. Here we have created the Apex class. We have defined two attributes, one of type string, another type of account. I'm just recapping the session what we have learned today. And this is the variable of account type. So if we want to bind any data into this, we have to instantiate, means we need to create the memory for that. We need to create the space. So inside the constructor we are instantiating this, and in the via page itself we are binding the values, because this objacc referencing to the account, and we can get any field of the account in this attribute by putting dot like objacc dot name, phone, industry, rating, account number, anything we can get from whatever the fields are available. We can get all the fields in this approach. And then we have created the button, command button. That is the value, means what text you want to give to your button. And then action. Action always will be your method. Method means your apex class method, server side function. So create account is a function here. When we come to this, we are debugging like what we were getting the details. Let me comment it. So first I want to check whether we are able to get the data, receive the data from VF page to the server or not. If we are able to receive, that is good. If not, we have to check what is missing part, why we are not getting the data into the Apex. Then we are making the DML. So we call it DML. In Salesforce, we have different DMLs: insert, update, delete, upsert. So when we want to create the data record, first time we are creating, we will use insert. Let's say if we have the data, we have the record in the Salesforce, but we want to update some values, we'll use update. Let's say we are not sure whether we have the data or not. Maybe like we need to create the data. If we have, then we will be going to update. We use upsert. In upsert, it will be going to check if we have the data, it will update, otherwise it will create the new record. So upsert is the combination of insert and update, you can say. In the delete, if you want to delete any record, you can use delete DML. So there are four DMLs which we basically use: insert, update, upsert, and delete. Insert, when you want to create the records first time. Let's say we have created this record, okay, and if I want to make some update to this record, I want to update, let's say, the account number, then it will be update. Okay, when I'm not sure whether we have the right record or not. And in case of update, important thing is we really need to have the ID. If you do not have the ID of the record, we cannot update. So it's mandatory to have the ID of the record when we are performing update DML. In case of upsert, if you have the ID, it will update. If you do not have the ID, it will create the new record. When we create the new record, system will give you the unique ID. That is the unique ID which we have. Another is delete. If you want to delete any record, you need to perform, you need to use delete DML. Okay, and here we are using the instance of page reference because we want to navigate to the detail page. And here we are generating the URL. It will automatically give you the base URL. Base URL, again I'm letting you know. So this is the base URL. We are appending this slash, and then mapping the ID dynamically. We are getting the ID here. This is the ID which we are getting, which we will get if you record is inserted successfully. It will give you the ID. As I said, when we create the record, we perform the insert DML, it will give you the unique ID of 18 digits. Okay, so that's all for today's session.